Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today I'm going to do a video about my favorite first lines from novels. First of all, welcome to the channel. If you are new, I'm glad you found this video today, and if you have recently subscribed, I'm so glad that you are here, and I hope that you have fun with this video. Before I start, I have to demonstrate what is this, foreshadowing, a hint of one of the titles to come. I think I've shown this shirt before, but since this book actually comes up in today's video, I had to wear something appropriate. If you have a YouTube channel, I don't know if this happens to you, but I guess it's like a psychosomatic coughing thing or something. Like every time I'm totally fine, I'm perfectly well, and the minute I start filming, my throat is like the Sahara Desert, but yet it has like frogs in it. And I start to talk and everything comes out all croaky and I have to cough and clear my throat and spend all this time just making all kinds of hideous noises. And then my nose starts running. And like the whole thing, the second I hit the camera, I'm just, I don't know. Does anyone else have this problem? Anyway, I spend a bunch of time either starting over or editing out all of these random explosions, but why am I even talking about this? Because I'm going to cut them all out. Okay, let's move on. All right, famous first lines. So the parameters that I set for myself here were it had to be books I've actually read and that I had available in the room. The first rule is because I just decided to make that rule because there are some famous first lines that I actually like, but I haven't yet read the book, like A Tale of Two Cities. And then there's some that I've read in the past and I don't have them on hand. And that is mainly just laziness because I wanted to gather them all up and make the video right now. So I thought, okay, I'll have, 8 or 10. Well, I ended up with about 20. So some of them I'm going to highlight and some are going to go in an honorable mention down below. All right, so let's talk about some famous first lines and why I love them. I'm going to start with Jane Austen, but I'm not going to do the most obvious choice. Pride and Prejudice is going down in the honorable mentions, and I do love that opening, but it is so often quoted that I've decided to go a different direction and do another one that also is sometimes mentioned, but I really love this opening, and that is the one for Emma. Let's take a listen. Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her. All right, I love that opening sentence, and I love it for several reasons. First of all, it's just such a great setup. We know we have a book named Emma, and Emma's obviously going to be a main character. And this opening line makes you wonder about the author's intentions. Is Emma Woodhouse, is this ironic? Is she really all of these things or none of these things? Is she the kind of person that you would be jealous of or aggravated by? Yes, actually. And obviously, if the first line of a novel says that a person has never been distressed or vexed, we have forthcoming a tale of vexation. You know that it's going to be good. And there is something light in the tone that makes you feel that it's not going to be a tragedy. But you can tell you have somebody here who's been very complacent and the boat is going to be rocked. So I really like the foreshadowing that manages to be combined into that first sentence, and also giving us a little hint that we're going to enjoy watching this person being indisposed and maybe not too distressed about it. Maybe it's something that needs to happen, and it really does. All right, love that book. Let's take a look at another great opening about a group of young women, and in fact, it is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. And this is a very iconic opening as well. And I like in this book how the very opening, this famous opening, in just one line from each of these 4 March sisters gives you a tiny little glimpse of their personalities on the very first page of the novel. Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, grumbled Jo, lying on the rug. It's so dreadful to be poor, sighed Meg, looking down at her old dress. I don't think it's fair for some girls to have plenty of pretty things and other girls nothing at all, added little Amy with an injured sniff. We've got father and mother and each other, said Beth contentedly from her corner. So we have just one line from each girl. We got grumpy old cantankerous Joe. We have Meg, who perpetually kind of bemoans being out of style and not being able to keep up with the other girls. Amy flouncing about and acting spoiled, and then Beth, who is just, always serene and calm, and you can tell that in just that one little passage that Beth is not being sanctimonious because the other sisters aren't rolling their eyes or throwing socks at her or anything. They actually get a little bit chastised by her comment as it goes on. The sanctimonious role in this book is saved for Marmee, but that's a rant that I shall not make again at this particular juncture. All right, so I like that one as well. And then to complete my trio of women main characters being introduced, I tried to group this video a little bit thematically. So this section is main women being introduced in the first lines. So my last entry, this is a less virtuous woman, less not so young and fresh as the others, and kind of a divisive character. Some people love this character and some people don't like her at all. And I am talking about Moll Flanders, coming to you from 1722 by Daniel Defoe. And Moll, of course, is, if you've never read this book, I love this book. I think it's a delight and a treat, even though Moll is horrible. She's absolutely horrible. Some people don't like this book because she's so awful. She is indeed a thief, a con artist, a horrible mother. She's reprehensible, and I love this book. Just her ruthless drive and her self-preservation. And I find it oftentimes very funny as well, even in a kind of a horrible, dark humor kind of way. But here is the beginning, which basically she's explaining that she can't even tell you who she is because the statute of limitations has not run out on a bunch of crimes that she has not accounted for. My true name is so well known in the records or registers at Newgate and in the Old Bailey, and there are some things of such consequence still depending there relating to my particular conduct, that it is not to be expected that I would set my name or the account of my family to this work. Perhaps after my death it may be better known. At present it would not be proper. No, not though a general pardon should be issued, even without exceptions and reserve of persons or crimes. It is enough to tell you that as some of my worst comrades who are out of the way of doing me harm, having gone out of the world by the steps and the string, as I often expected to go, know me by the name of Moll Flanders, so that you may give me leave to speak of myself under that name till I dare own who I have been as well as who I am. So our friend Moll is giving us a pseudonym because she's so notorious by her own name, and this is just a nickname given to her by some old friends who sadly have been executed. It's a pretty accurate first impression of Moll, and I probably need to reread and talk about this book at some point soon because I find this book to be, and if you liked Dangerous Liaisons and just reading about those dastardly people, even though they were awful, you probably would also like Moll Flanders. All right, so that's my trio of intros about women. Now I have some intros about some young men. And I chose these books because they are linked together thematically and subject-wise. And we have to start with the earliest one, which is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, which I read very recently. And it's a first-person tale. David is looking back at a more mature point in his adult life, all the way back to childhood and his young adulthood. The first chapter of David Copperfield is famously titled I Am Born, and here is the first paragraph. Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show. To begin my life with the beginning of my life, I record that I was born, as I have been informed and believe, on a Friday at 12 o'clock at night. It was remarked that the clock began to strike and I began to cry simultaneously. That intro is replicated with adjustments in Barbara Kingsolver's novel Demon Copperhead, which of course is a reimagining of David Copperfield set in modern day Appalachia. And in this story, the beginning is, first, I got myself born. A decent crowd was on hand to watch, and they've always given me that much. The worst of the job was up to me, my mother being, let's just say, out of it. They don't get into the timestamps in that particular opening, but it does begin with, let's start with when I was born. And for a novel that was written in between those two, but kind of borrows from the format yet again, we have, of course, Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. You knew I had to include it in this video. And this really is one of my very most top 5 all-time favorite beginnings of a novel. If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll probably want to know is where I was born and what my lousy childhood was like and how my parents were occupied and all before they had me and all that David Copperfield kind of crap. But I don't feel like going into it if you want to know the truth. I feel like those three really go together. I like in each case how we get immediately a tone of the personality of these three narrators, Holden, Demon, and David. We're going to look at a trio of more recent books and take the theme a little darker this time. And in these cases, the first sentence sets you up for, I don't know, in an ominous way. There's tension, there's suspense, there's some dread in these openings, and they hit you with that kind of impact. Instead of being hooked in by a person you want to get to know, you are curious in a creepy way about what this book's going to actually be about and how far is it going to go. So let's see, let's go by times they were written. The first one is Kindred by Octavia Butler, which of course is a story about a woman who finds herself unexpectedly traveling back and forth in time to a slave plantation in the early 1800s, where she has to save a young white boy who, every time that he is in some kind of danger. And then she shuttles back and forth to her modern day existence in the 1970s. And the opening of this book is riveting. I lost an arm on my last trip home. My left arm. What? That's the beginning line. First of all, I'm like, wait, what do you mean you lost your arm on your trip? Like there was an accident and your arm got cut off? And then the next paragraph doesn't really illuminate anything more. And I lost about a year of my life and much of the comfort and security I had not valued until it was gone. When the police released Kevin, he came to the hospital and stayed with me so that I would know I hadn't lost him too. That clarifies nothing. Who's Kevin? Why did the police have him? How did she lose an arm? Did they think Kevin did it? So when you're starting the book, you're just dropped in like that. And it kind of mirrors her feelings when she suddenly gets dropped into the past and doesn't know what just happened, where she is, what she's supposed to do. And so in a way it is a foreshadowing that you don't know, but just about the mood of the unpredictability of this novel, when she does not know when she's going to suddenly go back in time or be able to come forward in time again. And if you have never read Kindred, it is a very cool novel. Love that time travel. All right, moving up to the 1980s, but also a book that has to do with slavery and its aftermath. We have Beloved by Toni Morrison. I read the beginning of this book in another video that I did about books that had ghosts in them. And of course, Beloved is a ghost. In this story, there is a woman who has escaped from slavery with some of her children and made a new life. But she is haunted, her family is haunted by a baby that did not survive. 124 was spiteful, full of a baby's venom. The women in the house knew it, and so did the children. For years, each put up with the spite in his own way, but by 1873, Setha and her daughter Denver were its only victims. And then we get an account of the family members that have just grown up and gotten out of this place and who remains. And instantly the tone is set of a place with a foreboding feeling. But Setha feels different about this ghost than everybody else. And that is part of the beauty of the story. And then a little ways into the story, a actual what I guess you'd say a corporeal version of Beloved as a young woman comes into their lives. And I don't want to tell too much about it. And you know what's happening to me already is each of these books that I'm highlighting, I want to set it aside and read it next. And of course I cannot read all of these books next, but they're rekindling my interest just talking about them. All right, the next one in my trio of unsettling beginnings is a less familiar or less famous one, but one that I kind of saved it for the end of the trio because it's the most scary and gruesome. It's kind of gross, so if you're not up for a grisly paragraph, you might want to skip forward until you see me moving on to the next book. But it is Await Your Reply by Dan Chaon, and this book was published in 2009. I highly recommend it if you like complicated, dark, and bizarre tales, as all of his are. There's no simple way to describe what this book is about. There's several different stories that are told separately and they converge together later on. That's all I'm going to tell you. But just once you hear this beginning, this will let you know if you want to pursue reading this book. So here it comes, I warned you. We are on our way to the hospital, Ryan's father says. Listen to me, son. You are not going to bleed to death. Ryan is still aware enough that his father's words come in through the edges, like sunlight on the borders of a window shade. His eyes are shut tight and his body is shaking, and he's trying to hold up his left arm to keep it elevated. We are on the way to the hospital, his father says, and Ryan's teeth are chattering. He clenches and unclenches them, and a series of wavering colored lights, greens, indigos, plays along the surface of his closed eyelids. On the seat beside him, in between him and his father, Ryan's severed hand is resting on a bed of ice in an 8-quart styrofoam cooler. And that is the first page of Await Your Reply. I don't know what it says about me that 2 out of the 3 of the books in this section were about missing arms and hands. It seems to reflect something about my reading taste. But moving right along, let's look at something a little happier, a little bit cozier. Want some cozy first opening lines? Well, the next one is a book that I'm going to read in May for the Forster read along, which is A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I read it years ago. I've seen the movie a couple of times, enjoyed all of that, and I am excited to reread this book. I love the way that the type, I don't know if you can see, the way the type looks in this particular edition. And this edition has A Room with a View, Howard's Inn, and Morris. I'm usually not a fan of these sort of jumbo collected editions, but I'm really happy that I have this now because we are reading all of these novels sometime during the rest of this year. So I have them right here. All right, so we have a group of people who have traveled to Italy, a group of British people. And of course, what they want is a room with a view. Did they get one? Not at first. Chapter 1, The Bertolini. The Signora had no business to do it, said Miss Bartlett. No business at all. She promised us south rooms with a view close together. Instead of which, here are north rooms looking into a courtyard and a long way apart. Oh, Lucy! And a cockney besides, said Lucy, who had been further saddened by the Signora's unexpected accent. It might be London. Oh, the audacity. They didn't get the room they signed up for. So that's where we begin, but read a couple more pages and I'm not going to tell you what happens next. All right, and then my other cozier edition. Well, the intro is cozy, but things proceed on from there. And that is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, which of course goes along with my shirt. And I'm just dying to reread The Hobbit. This one really might happen. Maybe I'll read this, put this in my May TBR. The Hobbit, or There and Back Again by J.R.R. Tolkien. Chapter 1 is called An Unexpected Party, and the first paragraph reads as such. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. All right, I love the hobbit holes. I love the Hobbiton, the town. I love the whole thing. It goes into great detail after that about the door and the rooms and everything where Bilbo lives, and then the unexpected party. So the whole first chapter is a joy, but it is the beginning of a story in which this comfortable setting is uprooted, and of course Bilbo is swept up into an adventure and taken away from his cozy little hole. Of all the different settings in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, if I could live anywhere of those places, I would live with the hobbits. I don't know if I really want to live in a down in a hole, but there's just, I don't know, maybe it's all the meals and everything. It just really appeals to me. I'm going to wrap this video up with a couple of one-sentence wonders. The very first sentence going boom and grabbing you in. First off, we have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which is, of course, an autobiographical story of her time. I guess she was college age when she fell into a deep depression, attempted suicide, and then slowly began to recover. And the first sentence is, it was a queer, sultry summer, the summer they electrocuted the Rosenbergs, and I didn't know what I was doing in New York. So right from the start, we have this sense of a kind of an off-kilter time in her life and a feeling of uncertainty. And of course, it goes downhill from there before it goes uphill. And then last but not least, we have 1984 by George Orwell, which famously begins, it was a bright, cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13. What is going to happen? Well, I hope that you enjoyed this little foray into opening lines. And it is not a bright, cold day in April here. I think it's going to be in the mid-80s. But wherever you are, I hope that you are having a nice, bright April day. Please let me know if you agree with my choices of famous first lines. Take a look at the honorable mentions as well that I will put in the notes. And let me know in the comments if you have some different ones that I overlooked, or maybe it's books I have not read. But please share also what your favorite, which novels have your favorite first lines as well. I can't wait to see. So I hope you have a great day, and I will be back again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.